Synthetic dollars, real consequences. Inside the quantum loop of stablecoins. Introduction. In an era where everything from identities to assets is being digitized, the line between real and replica is growing dangerously thin. Nowhere is this blur more consequential than in the case of stablecoins, digital tokens engineered to mirror the US dollar. To the average user, a stablecoin feels like a dollar. It's priced like one, moves faster than one, and sits neatly in a digital wallet. But beneath that convenience lies a profound illusion. Stablecoins are not dollars. They are synthetic representations tethered to real dollars through legal contracts, custodial reserves, and now, increasingly, federal regulation. The recent passage of the Genius Act, a bipartisan bill designed to regulate U.S. dollar-backed stablecoins, seems like a long overdue step toward financial clarity. Yet what it truly does is far more complex. It formalizes a two-layer monetary system where each dollar now exists in two economic realities at once. One physical, one digital. One earning interest quietly at the U.S. Treasury, the other spinning through decentralized finance at breakneck speed. This expose unpacks the stablecoin framework now being legalized and legitimized, how it works, who it benefits, and why it introduces quantum-level distortions into the heart of global finance. What emerges is not a story of innovation alone, but of systemic risk, fractured monetary identity, and a financial architecture increasingly unmoored from its foundations. The rise of the stablecoin. Stablecoins began as a workaround, an on-ramp for crypto traders who wanted to move fast without the friction of traditional banking. The early pioneer, Tether USDT, offered a simple promise: one token, $1. Whether that promise was credible or not was beside the point. It functioned. Liquidity flowed, markets matured, and exchanges gained a way to denominate trades in something that felt like cash. But what started as a utility token has now grown into a multi-hundred-billion-dollar shadow system, riding parallel to traditional finance. Stablecoins like USDC by Circle and DAI by MakerDAO extended the model, some with greater transparency, others with decentralized governance. Each iteration promised to solve one of fiat's pain points: speed, programmability, borderlessness. By 2024, stablecoins had become more than plumbing. They were platforms for programmable dollars. People used them to send remittances instantly across continents, earn yield in DeFi lending protocols, escape hyperinflation in emerging markets, and even settle payments between corporations and DAOs. What began as a temporary bridge evolved into an entire monetary stratum, layered atop the dollar but untethered from its constraints. And with no consistent regulation in sight, the stablecoin market sprawled, technically sophisticated, legally ambiguous, and increasingly systemic. Enter the Genius Act, not as a disruptor, but as a consolidator, an attempt by U.S. lawmakers to wrap this expanding monetary membrane in a comprehensible legal structure. But in doing so, it may have crystallized the very distortions it sought to tame. Section 3. What the Genius Act legalizes. The Genius Act, short for Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins, marks a watershed moment in American financial regulation. Framed as a long overdue response to the explosive rise of stablecoins, the Act offers the first comprehensive federal framework for legitimizing their issuance, custody, and circulation. On the surface, it appears to bring order to chaos. The Act outlines clear rules. Every stablecoin must be backed one-to-one by liquid reserves, cash, bank deposits, or short-term U.S. treasuries. Issuers must publish monthly disclosures and undergo independent audits if their float exceeds $50 billion. Only regulated entities, banks, licensed fintech firms, or state-supervised money transmitters can legally issue these instruments. It prohibits algorithmic stablecoins, which attempt to maintain their peg through software logic rather than collateral, yield-bearing stablecoins, preventing them from resembling interest-bearing bank accounts. And critically, it ensures that token holders rank above other creditors in bankruptcy scenarios, treating stablecoin claims like cash redemptions rather than speculative investments. On paper, the Genius Act looks like responsible innovation. It grants clarity to issuers. It gives legal cover to banks and payment firms. It draws a sharp line between financial instruments and synthetic money. But beneath its technocratic polish lies something more consequential. The Act does not just regulate stablecoins. It enshrines them. It authorizes the creation of a new class of financial asset, digitally native, dollar-denominated, and profit-extracting without being deposit guaranteed. This is not just regulatory plumbing. It's the official sanctioning of a two-tier monetary system, one that legalizes the divergence between real dollars and synthetic ones. The dollar becomes forkable, mirrorable, rehypothecated into new digital expressions, all under a framework stamped genius. What began as a tool for faster payments has now become a legal shell for financial alchemy. Section 4. The Dual Realm Dollar. At the heart of the stablecoin system lies a paradox. The same dollar exists in two places at once. Under the Genius Act, every issued stablecoin must be fully backed by a real dollar or its equivalent sitting in reserve. But once that backing is tokenized, minted onto a blockchain, it begins a separate life. That digital dollar can now be transferred, lent, pooled, pledged, or programmed. It flows through decentralized finance, DeFi, like blood in a synthetic circulatory system, while its physical counterpart, cash or a treasury bill, sits in a regulated custodian account, earning base layer yield. This is the architecture of what can only be described as a dual-realm monetary system. Realm 1. The real-world reserve, cash in a bank, treasuries earning interest, controlled by the issuer. Realm 2. The digital proxy, liquid, programmable, and tradable across blockchains, used in everything from remittances to yield farming. They are tethered, but not truly the same. One is money, the other is a simulation of money. This simulation is fragile. It depends on trust in the issuer's honesty and solvency, the stability of custodial arrangements, the legal enforcement of redemption rights. Yet the digital twin often behaves as if it were the original, circulating in high volumes, acting as a medium of exchange and pricing assets across DeFi markets. The more troubling twist? Both realms generate yield, just not for the same people. The reserve realm earns interest from T-bills or bank deposits. That yield is captured by the issuer, whether it's a fintech firm or a chartered bank. The digital realm earns yield in DeFi protocols like Aave or Curve, where users lend or stake their stablecoins for returns. These returns, however, are risk-derived, subject to market volatility, smart contract bugs, and liquidity shocks. And yet, under the Genius Act, the issuer is explicitly forbidden from sharing any of its safe sovereign yield with the end user. That would make the token resemble a bank deposit, which would then trigger entirely different regulatory requirements. This creates a lopsided yield funnel. Issuers get the safety, users get the risk. The dollar has been cloned, but the rights attached to that clone have been stripped down to bare utility, while the benefits accrue elsewhere. In effect, we have constructed a monetary hologram, a financial object that looks, acts, and moves like money, but is ontologically different. A quantum dollar, simultaneously live and synthetic, trusted and abstract, legal and disembodied. And this split between form and function, risk and reward, will define the next fault line in financial stability. Section 5. Yield without accountability. In a rational system, yield flows to those who bear the risk. But in the stablecoin universe created by the Genius Act, this principle has been turned on its head. Let's follow the money. A user converts $1,000 into a regulated stablecoin like USDC. That cash doesn't vanish. It's deposited by the issuer into high-grade instruments, usually short-term U.S. treasuries or insured bank accounts, both of which earn yield. These instruments might return 4 to 5% annually in the current interest rate environment, but per the Genius Act's rules, the issuer cannot pass this yield to the user. Doing so would make the stablecoin indistinguishable from an interest-bearing deposit, thereby classifying the issuer as a bank, subject to capital requirements, FDIC insurance, and strict oversight. So the stablecoin issuer keeps the yield. The user holds a sterile token. Meanwhile, in the digital realm, that same stablecoin can be used in DeFi protocols like Aave, Curve, or Uniswap, where it can earn risk-based returns by being lent out, collateralized, or pooled. These activities may generate yield, but with it comes protocol risk, smart contract risk, liquidation risk, and exposure to volatile markets. In essence, users take risk to earn unstable yield. Issuers take no risk to earn stable yield. This is yield without accountability, and it's systemic. It creates a two-speed financial engine where one party enjoys sovereign-grade returns with no downside, while another chases yield in speculative markets. a legal shield that prevents users from asking why the real-world returns of their backing assets are being siphoned off. A perverse incentive for issuers to grow their float, the total number of stablecoins in circulation, not to support users, but to increase passive income from T-bill interest. The Genius Act locks in this imbalance. By codifying who can issue stablecoins and what rights users do not have, it creates a regulatory enclosure around a new kind of business model, monetary rent-seeking, dressed as financial innovation. And unlike banks, stablecoin issuers don't have to lend or invest to earn. They don't intermediate capital. They just park your money, issue a digital proxy, and pocket the spread. It is the ultimate synthetic carry trade, riskless income, regulated protection, and zero obligations to depositors. This may be legal now, but it is not sustainable. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Section 6, Systemic Risk and False Signals. For all its emphasis on safety and soundness, the Genius Act obscures a deeper truth. Stablecoins introduce new forms of systemic risk by pretending to reduce them. Let's start with the reserves. By requiring that all stablecoins be backed one-to-one by cash or short-term treasuries, the Act concentrates massive capital flows into ultra-short government debt. This creates an illusion of security. After all, what could be safer than U.S. treasuries? But if billions, or eventually trillions of dollars worth of stablecoins are parked in T-bills, this distorts the front end of the yield curve. Demand for short-term paper artificially suppresses yields and undermines price signals that normally govern liquidity and risk in credit markets. In a vacuum, this might seem harmless, but zoom out. This behavior diverts capital away from other productive uses, longer-term investments, infrastructure financing, entrepreneurial risk. In aggregate, stablecoin reserves become a form of capital deadweight, risk-free for the issuer, extractive for the economy. More troubling still is the liquidity illusion these tokens create. Stablecoins are often used as instant-on, dollar-equivalent assets in crypto and DeFi markets. They serve as collateral, trading pair, and settlement layer. But their liquidity depends on redemption pipelines that only function under normal market conditions. In the event of a panic, say a regulatory shock, issuer insolvency, or smart contract exploit, the redemption process can clog. Even fully backed stablecoins can become temporarily illiquid if everyone tries to cash out at once. This isn't just theoretical. We've already seen many bank-run dynamics during moments of volatility, like the temporary depegging of USDC in March 2023 during the SVB collapse. Stablecoins mimic money, but lack the deep institutional backstops that support it. And then there's the long end of the curve. Stablecoins have no meaningful interaction with long-term treasuries. They don't buy the 10-year or the 30-year, precisely the instruments tied to mortgage rates, infrastructure bonds, and sovereign debt sustainability. In fact, by soaking up demand for short-term debt, they may steepen the yield curve further, making long-term borrowing more expensive and placing additional stress on U.S. fiscal policy. In this way, stablecoins may accelerate the fragmentation of the bond market. Short-end yields are artificially compressed. Long-end yields stay elevated or rise. The government's debt servicing costs soar, yet the illusion of digital dollars remains intact. What we're left with is false stability. A system that looks frictionless and modern, but quietly hollows out real price discovery, siphons yield upstream, and shifts risk to those least equipped to manage it. And the public, enchanted by speed and accessibility, may not realize they're transacting in a simulation until the cracks start to show. Section 7. Foreign issuers, shadow dollars, and national sovereignty. As the U.S. builds a legal fortress around stablecoins via the Genius Act, a parallel question looms. What about the stablecoins that live outside this fortress? Enter Tether and other foreign-issued stablecoins, entities headquartered in jurisdictions beyond U.S. reach, yet widely used within U.S. crypto markets, DeFi protocols, and offshore exchanges. These tokens, often backed by opaque reserves and unaudited claims, operate in the financial gray zone. Despite their unclear provenance, they serve as de facto dollars for millions of users worldwide. To U.S. regulators, this is more than a competitive irritant. It's a sovereignty issue. Under the Genius Act, Any stablecoin offered to U.S. users must conform to strict reserve, disclosure, and licensing requirements. But the Act also leaves a door open. Foreign issuers can operate in the U.S. if their home regulation is deemed equivalent. That vague threshold invites friction. What counts as equivalent? Who decides? And how do you enforce compliance on code that flows across blockchains without a passport? Senator Warren and others have sounded the alarm. Their concern isn't just about AML/KYC evasion or terrorist financing, though those fears are routinely invoked. The deeper anxiety is about control slipping away. Because when a foreign stablecoin achieves network dominance, when it becomes the primary medium of exchange in certain regions or sectors, it erodes the U.S. government's grip on its own monetary policy. Every token in circulation is a mini dollar operating outside the Fed's purview. That's not just a risk to users. It's a strategic threat to the dollar's hegemony. In this sense, stablecoins are becoming the soft power tools of financial geopolitics. U.S. regulated stablecoins, like USDC, serve to reinforce dollar dominance in a compliant wrapper. Foreign stablecoins operate as shadow extensions of U.S. capital, but without loyalty to U.S. law. The Genius Act attempts to formalize the former and fence out the latter. But in a borderless digital world, code doesn't stop at customs. And if U.S.-based stablecoins become too tightly regulated, while foreign competitors offer frictionless alternatives, users, especially outside the U.S., may simply route around the rules. In that light, Genius may be less a tool for innovation and more a lever of monetary containment, a legal moat to keep the illusion of dollar control from unraveling completely. The stablecoin wars won't be won with consumer protection talking points. They'll be won or lost on who controls the infrastructure of programmable value. Section 8. Philosophical disorientation. What is a dollar now? Amid the layers of regulation, reserves, and real-time payment rails, an existential question floats beneath the surface. What exactly is a dollar now? Historically, the U.S. dollar was a sovereign instrument, issued by the Treasury, controlled by the Federal Reserve, and backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. It was money by decree, enforced through legal tender laws, and global trust in American institutions. But stablecoins challenge that definition. They aren't issued by the state. They don't reside in central bank accounts. They're not always redeemable in practice, especially during times of market stress. And yet, they are treated as dollars in behavior and belief, used for purchases, priced against goods, counted as assets on balance sheets, collateralized, rehypothecated, and traded globally. This is where the philosophical distortion begins. Stablecoins function like dollars, but don't possess the ontological properties of dollars. They are representations, symbolic proxies made real by consensus, convenience, and code. The Genius Act attempts to contain this disorientation by wrapping stablecoins in legal scaffolding. By requiring 1-1 backing, it affirms the dollar's supremacy. By banning interest payments to users, it preserves the regulatory distinction between money and banking. By granting redemption priority, it treats stablecoin holders as quasi-cash claimants. But even with these guardrails, the metaphysical tension remains. Are stablecoins real money, or just real enough to cause systemic consequences? Because when you tokenize a dollar, you don't just digitize it, you abstract it. You turn it into a model of money, a container for value, a logic object that behaves like a dollar until it doesn't. This abstraction becomes dangerous when it's used as if it were permanent, frictionless, and universal. But in reality, stablecoins rely on the legal solvency of the issuer, the custody of collateral in a very real-world bank, the maintenance of digital infrastructure across volatile markets. They are fragile belief machines kept afloat by collective faith, speed, and the illusion of convertibility. And perhaps the most dangerous illusion of all is this, that because stablecoins are regulated, they must therefore be stable. But stability is not a legal outcome. It is an economic property, grounded in fundamentals, reinforced by institutional credibility, not by smart contracts or Senate votes. As we blur the boundaries between real and synthetic, we risk losing the semantic clarity that makes money work in the first place. Conclusion: the cost of synthetic clarity. The Genius Act arrives at a time when the financial world is splitting, not just between centralized and decentralized systems, but between physical and symbolic forms of money. It promises clarity, stability, and oversight for an asset class that has long operated in the shadows. And in technical terms, it delivers clear rules, defined licenses, structured enforcement. But this clarity comes at a cost. By legalizing the abstraction of the dollar into tokenized form, while simultaneously preventing users from accessing the yield on their own deposits, the act locks in a bifurcated monetary system. One layer accrues power, profit, and protection. The other layer transacts, speculates, and assumes risk. This is not a bridge to financial inclusion. It's a monetized moat. In crystallizing this structure, the Genius Act doesn't just recognize the quantum loop of stablecoins, it codifies it. It enshrines a new class of monetary instrument that looks like cash, acts like cash, and yet behaves like a synthetic derivative tethered to real value by legal string. And here lies the deepest danger. When regulation bestows legitimacy on a model that is fundamentally simulated, it pushes society into a kind of financial augmented reality, one where dollars multiply not through lending or productivity, but through mirror logic, legal fiction, and yield games. We are not stabilizing money. We are duplicating its image, then allowing that image to circulate with only a spiritual umbilical cord connecting it to the source. If left unchecked, this system risks reconfiguring the very idea of value, from something rooted in trust and production to something defined by programmable belief, institutional privilege, and synthetic architecture. The consequences won't be immediate, but they will be real. And when the simulation breaks, whether through redemptions, insolvency, or geopolitical stress, it won't just be code that collapses. It will be confidence.